for the Naiji, something that is of major importance to consider is the sway they have over their bubbles. Bubbles pretty much make up everything in the universe, including humans and the various social alchemies and communities that they build. For this reason, the Naiji's ability to sway such bubbles equates to a tremendous amount of power. So this goes with the classic saying, we all know it, so let's say it together now: with great power comes great responsibility. And that's true. So Naiji have numerous ways that their sway takes place, and actually why it sways people. So Naiji need to be aware of these things that cause this effect on the bubble, so they can do it heroically, because there's a lot of qualities of Naiji that are incredibly important to humanity and humanity's continued progress, but they're also incredibly formidable and dangerous, and they're not actually handled correctly. They can actually cause a great deal of harm. So this is one of them. The Naiji sway is something that must be taken into account and mastered in a heroic way, because of the effects it can have. So the first is the personal example of the Naiji. The Naiji actually exude a knowing. They know the unknown things that other humans don't have privy to, but they do. And they walk around with this air. Now, this should not be abused, but also is part of the Naiji character and way. One thing that lets Naiji lead in sort of an unusual fashion is people sort of note there's something about this person. They know things. They really think things through. So Naiji should have that. In fact, if you go sometimes Fozen or you go Beta, you can actually not let the environment know who you are. But on the other hand, there are Naiji who go, and this is not the way we're built to do it normally, but I mean, it's on the unheroic side, and people's life situations could cause them to do unheroic things. And one of them is to exude an air of knowing when you really don't know that much more than other people around you. So you can see right there how the sway could be used positively. If you do actually know things, you should have an air about you that you know things, otherwise people won't listen to you. And then the fact that you have wisdom to give is not serviced correctly, because you did not exude the air of a person who knows. Basically, you didn't let the environment know that you are a hunter, that you are a wizard, that you are a Nai Alpha, that you are a Naiji. You're supposed to do that. But you're not supposed to just note, for example, and make Naiji do, when I just act a certain way, people assume I know what I'm doing. Naiji can really run the table with that. And obviously that is necessary for certain survival instances, but as an overall life practice, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. That's not the heroic use of it. Continue on. Besides that air, that bearing, they have the power of oration. Naiji, there are many mojos that have very strong abilities designed for oration and so forth, but the Naiji really stand out as being truly amazing in both persuasion, debate, intimidation, seduction. There's pretty much no use of the language, singing, poetry, speeches, acting, just being a cool Joe at the bar, really going native. There's pretty much nothing that involves communication that when Naiji do it well doesn't make other people want to imitate that. That's key. A large part of the Naiji sway is that when Naiji we can be seen eccentric in a lot of ways, especially when we aren't winning. When we haven't figured out to make our simulator get us to win. But once our simulator gets us to start to win, we tend to win a lot. It's weird. It takes Naiji a long time to figure out how to engage the world. But once they do, they tend to do really, really, really well. So people will start to note the way you do things. And humans often don't know what they're looking at, so they may attribute any number of reasons to why it is that you are able to do the things that you're able to do. And Naiji, being secretive, often don't mind letting people's minds just run rampant with all kinds of ideas. They encourage, let the legend spread. Okay, and there is some need for that, obviously, for our playing style, but it should not be taken in an unheroic way, and you shouldn't let things go forward that cause people to imitate negative interpretations or negative true aspects of you. You actually have to understand that as I do certain things and I maybe speak well. For example, I speak well, especially if I really rehearse and get ready to do it. So I could make lots of arguments sound good. That's just something I could do. I actually have perspective shifting, so I could get into all kinds of people's heads. Nice, you do this for method acting, by the way, and just play the story from their shoes. That's actually not hard to do. So you have to be aware that other people will attempt to do what they think got you where you're going and not understand that process. What else? Record breaking. Obviously, when you break records, if you broke a record that people actually found impressive, then they're going to try and figure out if you broke that record because you drank 10 raw egg yolks in the morning for your protein shake, or you abstained from sex, or you slept around, or you did this with your money. It sounds funny, but when people are impressed by something greatly, and then the thing that impresses them greatly happens in a mysterious way, it's left to them to try and figure out how that happened, and a lot of times they won't get it right. So Naiji do have to take some responsibility for their impressive and mysterious nature, because it does have an effect on the environment. Record breaking is one of them. People will try to imitate you. You notice a lot of things here. That sense of knowing, that just absolute like natural law sureness, people want that. A lot of times, a lot of Naiji preach basically, these are Naiji who don't even know they're Naiji, but basically they're Naiji who preach, be a Naiji, be like me. To every mode where they meet, doesn't matter who you are, they basically say, be like me. And people can think if I act like them, I will get that sense of sureness. So really, that's a lie. That's actually a mathematical lie right there. Some of these people don't really know they're doing it. They actually think everyone can be an IG or should be an IG. And other ones actually know that people are different, have different basic instincts and desires, whatever, but they really don't care. They're actually just going to say, be like me. If you can't be like me, then that makes you lesser, and you should try harder. That's really not cool. The oration, again, if you can come in, you can sound really cool. Look at movies. Movies are a classic example of Naijiness. A tremendous amount of of directors, top actors, and screenwriters are all Naiji. So, and editors. A lot of editors are Naiji for movies. So, what this tells you is, if you look at movie speak, which is generally considered to be cooler than normal speak, it doesn't matter what movie it is, drama, comedy, action, it's supposed to be normal life with the cool parts pumped up and the boring parts taken out. It doesn't matter if you're talking about, Wuthering Heights, or you're talking about Con Air. It just needs to actually be very interesting. It needs to be very, very compelling. So Naiji oration is actually designed to basically have maximum impact. So we do a lot of rehearsing, and the Zai does editing. So a lot of times you're getting almost like movie speak in the way Naiji do things. And most Naiji who are aware of themselves will know what I'm talking about, which is they plan everything. They plan how they're going to approach a certain individual they care about and actually say things to them, and that usually makes it go pretty well. But then, no matter how well it went, the Zai will say, it would have gone better if you did this. So the next time they do that, they kind of boot up their simulator. Their simulator says, this is motif 27AB, whatever. It doesn't really say that. It just lets you know. And then you enact it, and it seems very masterful. Again, and then people try to imitate that. So Naiji tend to be eminently quotable. And that's part of the sway. A lot of people quote Naiji because just the way they say shit, even shit that's wrong, it's actually messed up as far as morality, and it's actually incorrect. So it doesn't. This is key. That actually, like right now, Naiji are funny. If they're funny and they have a sense of humor, people will actually listen to that and transmit that information. It's a storytelling ability of the Naiji. Naiji are naturally built to be storytellers and have their story be told. And lots of Naiji will do things to their story, maybe embellish them, or maybe overemphasize certain lurid things in order to make it a more memorable tale. But a Naiji must be careful never to whore out the principles of the teaching story they're giving. Never just go into something that's going to just wow the crowd just to get off lesser thrills and not actually deliver the important message that needs delivery. That's key. What else? Frenzy. As mentioned, the frenzy section, Nige, you have lots of frenzies, and frenzies, they will either freak people out in a very scared way, or it'll freak people out in like an awe-stricken way. And either way, the environment's going to react radically to it. For example, if people see it as a cool thing, Nige may have just like had a moment and they freaked the fuck out, but people saw that, and now something that you probably really shouldn't do maybe ever, but definitely not every day, has now become a popular thing to do in the local neighborhoods, and now kids are doing it on the corners, whatever it is, you know what I mean? So you have to be aware of this as an IG, that you sort of have to put what you do to other people with a advisory label. And so that is actually part of being an IG if you're going to be conscionable. What else? Dissatisfied. I actually combine this here with so dissatisfaction with approval, ING, combined with the well, no, I'll just say dissatisfaction approval, because actually it could just be sort of like a subordinate to a superior. So in this position, there's a natural human wiring to have a dance of superior to subordinate, and to be able to switch positions back and forth and to know when to do what. This can be used, Nige, for example, make really good magicians. There's a lot of top magicians in the world, magicians, mentalists, illusionists, etc., who are Nige, and one of the things they do is that they use natural dances humans' brains have, and they just move out crucial footsteps, and that's how they're able to fool you. Okay, so one of the things that can be done here is that Nige project, without knowing it, an air of dissatisfaction. This automatically puts you into the supervisor position. You're actually saying, like, I don't see what I like. That's an important note. Now, this is important to the way that the Nige works, because people tend to not do things the way the Nige would need, and so they need to have something preemptively saying, I'm not like other people. So that's the proper use of a dissatisfied signal. But a byproduct of it is, sometimes people will just defer to you, or solicit what it would take to make you happy. Particularly if they're needy. Do you mean it's a person who actually, you're at a restaurant, and you go in a restaurant and you're just looking, being a Nige, you don't realize that you accidentally are just looking vaguely dissatisfied. And so often one of the people in the environment will take it upon themselves like, ooh, we should go help this person. That person has basically put themselves in the position of trying to help you. Now the cool thing to be would for the Nige to go, oh, that was really nice of them. They didn't have to do that. That's the heroic way to interpret this motif. But the Nige can, oftentimes they have a lot of Zai, just stay cool and look at them sort of like, well, let's see. Let's see if you can give me what I want. And it's not wrong for Nige to do that in certain circumstances, but not randomly, not just in general public, going to a place like that with a restaurant where you're trying to be friendly and whatnot. So, when the person gives the Nige what they want, the Nige is inclined to use their Ji to show, ooh, I like that. So there's a dissatisfied and then a caring. This is supposed to happen anyway. That's why Nige are really, really good at kind of being like very sensitive leaders. They use this more sort of feeling-based, sensitive way of actually doing leadership, instead of just the rules say you have to do this. Instead of saying that the rules say you have to do something, it's, I'm a person that you would hopefully respect, and I think we should go this way. And then reacting negatively if there is something keeping from that, and positively if not. This is just the Nige natural way. However, you do understand this sounds a lot like training someone. Does that make sense? And this brings in, I guess, another part of it, which is the student-teacher dichotomy, is Nige, this natural way we're talking about, makes them also naturally be teachers to people. And as mentioned, another one about the teacher-student dichotomy is that Nige should be cool with actually switching between roles. But because they're so good at that dichotomy, they can almost initiate other people unconsciously, subliminally, into that motif dance, just by how they are. A lot of Naiji don't know they're doing this, but a lot of Naiji do know they're doing this. They actually are aware that they're bearing, and the way they give certain answers to people sets up a student-teacher dichotomy, with the other person being always a student. That's not how it's supposed to work, and that's a negative use of the sway. Positively, is Naiji do make incredibly good teachers and students. Either way, they tend to move people and have a tremendous effect, so that if you are a good teacher doing it properly, you'll actually have made an influence on all those students that is a positive one. But if you're like not a good teacher, not saying that you're incompetent, you could be very competent, but you maybe have some toxicity to you, maybe some prejudices you shouldn't have, the students will pick that up. They will attribute that wrong position on certain natural law things with your overall mastery. They will confuse the two, and they will take on the student of, let me try to emulate what the teacher is doing. They'll try to be, the mentee to mentor in that fashion. Other things, Naiji, because of their desire to express things to the tribe that are going to change it and take it to a new place, there tends to be a strong preference with Naiji to put their ji in what you consider to be non-standard formats. When you think of ji, standard formats, most people kind of think like personal communication, like in person, on the phone, and through writing. But actually, there's much more to ji to that. And in this case, a lot of Naiji will use artwork. They will write books. They will actually build monuments. And so that has a tremendous amount of sway over normal talk. This kind of gets into also the idea of monologuing. So the Naiji's choice to use media instead of actually speaking. They're going outside of phone, letter, email, or in-person communication, and they're actually crafting a ji spell. That's what a book is. A book is a spell book. A book on even science is designed to help make you smarter at the end. It's designed, even a storybook is designed to take you on a journey. So the Naiji ji has this very deeply transportive and transformative quality to it. Well, you have to take responsibility for that. For example, a lot of Naiji rappers, for example, are preaching about a negative part of the life experience and sort of glorifying it in a lot of ways. Not all rap artists, some are doing a fine job, but there is that element, and that has a lot of impact. When you actually make it rhyme, when you make it sexy, funny, badass, when you put music in, a thumping beat, when you have a really great music video, this is all part of a classic Naiji rapper putting out a very high-level product. That has a huge impact on people. People who don't know what life's all about, that may move them greatly if they don't already have an innate sense of what they think life is about. So that can sway anyone who actually would watch that product. So in the spirit forming, you need to experience the Daryu and express that, but you also need to move past it, way past it. And so if you don't do that, your personal, I'm just having artistic angst and Daryu ate up 50 years of my life, but you're now actually putting that out on the global enlightenment market to be picked up by anyone and everyone, and it could be so powerful, your art could be so moving that they're being moved by dark messages, by things that really either aren't true or are only true within a certain context. So when you're an artist, there is a responsibility to that. You are responsible to become more enlightened as part of your artistic process. You're not allowed to just do whatever you want. No, you have to grow. And this applies to science. The further you take science, and that is actually going to impact the future of the world. We're talking AI, we're talking cloning, we're talking wormholes. You have to become more enlightened. We cannot be having that kind of artistic or scientific power coming out of people who are not enlightened in its use and what it's going to do to the people. Because it's too impactful. It's so impactful. Podlair is big into the arts and the sciences and actually wants like total freedom of speech and communication, but it demands through Mojo journalism that people rise. So I mean, we want anyone, everyone to be able to express themselves, but we also want everyone to actually expect to have a heroic evaluation of their efforts. And may the most heroic win. That's what should go forward. However, Naiji can demand audiences even when their message isn't the most heroic. That's something to be aware of. They tend to do things in media form or monologue form that are just compelling by the nature of the presentation, not necessarily the content. Naturally flowing from that is these kinds of things for the way Naiji work. Naiji often don't achieve greatness in their lifetime, or even if they do, it often has profound impacts far after they're dead. So for good or for bad, these monologuing artifacts that Naiji come up with are going to be here way after they're dead. So let's say you actually have a monolith to some sort of prejudiced idea. There can be a reluctance to go away from that because people actually feel very moved by this monolith that stands tower over their town. They've raised their whole life seeing this monolith. They identify with something like a mountain they live under. And when they walk inside the monolith since an early age, and it's big, huge artistry, and it's carved, gorgeous hieroglyphs and passages that are done in poetry style that sound very good on the tongue. That's very compelling stuff. And now, if they find out that actually natural law might say that's wrong, they're going to have to fight against all that. You've created a tremendous spell of ignorance that they have to fight against. And so as a Naiji, you have to be aware of that. That's where in popular theory there's the pathways of ritual requirements and energy evolution, so that there's an always expanding, updating model. Otherwise, whatever was initially made could become a prison. And that's the key, is you never want to make sure as a Naiji that any of these incredibly powerful artifacts that you believe to be ultimately true becomes a prison for people's thoughts later. Because as a Naiji, you should hate any kind of imprisoning of the mind. So you have to make sure you would never be a purveyor of a product that would imprison people's minds. Is being heroic when there is the change of life experience. For Naiji, they have the longest peaking cycle of all the mojos, and this is on a day-to-day basis. It's also over a lifetime. So the way Naiji often work, unless they have some sort of natural talent that goes towards sports or something else like this, which can happen for anyone, maybe they're born rich, yada yada, but just standardized, Naiji tend to peak very late. So there is a tremendous feeling of dissatisfaction that boils and builds, which can warp a person into having a negative, incorrect view of natural law and the other people in existence around you on the planet. So that after slogging through what seems like a quagmire of bullshit your entire life to get your vision, whatever it may be, artistic, scientific, whatever, and then it starts paying out. Naiji had to be careful about the rage at having being mistreated, because they can lash out great. And this is key. Naiji do need to make sure once they come into power, once they actually are able to prove what's on their mind is actually true in some way, it gets validated in some way, they need to actually, yes, protect themselves from mistreatment in the future and announce that that's how they roll. That is part of the package. They're supposed to do that. The wrong part is to actually go on a spree of vengeance. That will train people, especially, you have to realize, if you have gone to such heights, if you have overcome such trials and challenges, people are going to see you as a great person, and they're going to associate that kind of behavior with being great, with being an impressive person, and you don't want that. Now, this is not to mean that Naiji are not supposed to have a ferocious temper and just lay down some serious natural law smackdown when required. That is part of being a Naiji, but wallowing. They have to be careful not to wallow, because it will, first and foremost, it will keep you from reaching your heroic heights. Because once, for example, a Naiji gets past like Daryu to where they can kind of handle it, if they spend all their time kind of going around their physical and metaphysical neighborhood saying, look how I'm not in Daryu anymore, look how I'm feeling good and successful, they're actually not going up higher. That's A, you're actually restricting your own upward movement. And B, in this context with the swaying of the bubble, is other people are going to look at that and try to emulate this. For example, we mentioned Naiji, who there are a lot of criminal visionaries, quote unquote, that have been Naiji, and a lot of it is because they looked around their environment and they saw, often these were other Naiji sometimes, who looked like they were winning. Now they're winning by being evil, but they were quote unquote winning, and that actually inspired a new generation of evildoers. So be fully aware of that responsibility as a Naiji. So do everything you have to do, work as hard as you have to do to get your vision out there, and then once it pays off, demand you be treated with respect from that moment forward, and you move forward. Don't actually go backwards. There's nothing really except to actually heal. That's the only thing you go backwards to do, is to heal. But the harm that was done in those years of trial and tribulation, it's done. And so really, you just have today and what's going forward. And you'll make sure everyone else knows that too, because they'll be looking up to you at this point.